If we're on a self-taught learning journey in our drawing, then that can be a fantastic experience. There are lots of advantages and benefits and opportunities with that. But there are some fundamental things we miss out on if we're not doing a course. And I just wanted to focus on some of those in this video, not trying to make a case for one or the other, but simply if we're aware of the things that we're missing out on in doing our own self-taught navigation of the learning to draw experience, then in our mind and in our thinking, in our planning, in what we do, we can compensate for those losses so that we don't lose out on the benefit of those things. And these may be things that we wouldn't necessarily have particularly even thought of as we're busy watching videos and reading books and drawing. So let's start. Perhaps the main thing we don't get when we don't do a set course is we don't get a curriculum. When we do a course, or if we go through a particular book from start to finish, then what we have is a series of planned modules. And these modules have, hopefully, well thought out content that's ordered in a helpful way, in a way that progresses from more basic levels to more sophisticated levels of complexity and understanding. And it's not just necessarily technical skills that we get practice with. With a good course, what we also get is a way of understanding what's happening, what we're doing, maybe a philosophy behind, or at least, as I said, a way of understanding what we're doing, what we're trying to do. And this provides a framework to help us fit all the different parts in together and to see a cohesiveness in what we do. All of this is tremendously helpful because it's as all these many smaller components are brought together and fitted together that they start to build into this more complex whole, into hopefully a better way of understanding the drawing process and then of being able to draw. And it's also important what's not included in the curriculum, because for any subject, for any discipline of learning, there's way more than we could ever do in 100 lifetimes, let alone in a course. So knowing what's not helpful to be doing right now, or what's helpful to never do, is an important part of a good curriculum. So we don't lose time getting distracted, doing things that aren't actually going to the place we want to go to is important. And not doing things that perhaps are relevant, but they're ahead of what we should be doing because they're ahead of what we're able to do well. And I think one of the most important things that in a curriculum, we get measured content. So we don't spend too long on something that's not important enough in the overall scheme of things to spend too much time on. And we spend more time on the things that are more complex or simply are going to be more fundamental or more important for us to learn to do well. There's a sense of proportion about how long we spend doing what. We don't do some things unhelpfully quickly, and we don't get bogged down in things simply because they're fun or interesting if in the big picture they're not terribly important for where we want to go. And I think that's one of the key things in a curriculum. It has a where we want to go at the end. There's a number of achievables that we hope to be able to do once we finish the course. And this wind you hear is coming straight up the Australian coast from Antarctica, if you couldn't tell. And all these things then alert us to the traps that the self-taught artist can fall into. We can go too fast with some things, we can get bogged down in other things that aren't particularly helpful simply because we find them fun, which is okay, but not if we're keen to get to a certain endpoint. We can get distracted with things that aren't actually at that endpoint, but just seem really interesting, but we didn't realize that they were diverting us from where we were wanting to go. We can grab bits of content from all over the place that actually don't even fit together, that come from different philosophical ways of understanding the drawing process. And we end up juggling fragments that will never fit together comfortably or perhaps at all for us, and that can be frustrating. Losing the sense of coherency and of an end point direction that a curriculum does, as well as an understanding of the relative importance of the parts, is something that as a self-taught artist we need to be aware of and to the best of our ability not let affect us negatively. Now, a good curriculum isn't just giving us the content that we need, but it's also presenting it in an interesting, engaging, and likely to be productive way. There's variation in what we do and how we do it because all of this stimulates interest, and that's helpful not just in stimulating our creativity for our drawing, but it's also helpful in letting us maintain interest in the course, that we don't get bogged down into a rut. It encourages us to be outwards in our thinking about our subject, about our drawing, about what we do. It encourages us to explore and to try new things, to have a sense of fun, to have a sense of who knows where this will end up, to have a sense of, well, I wouldn't have thought of trying this way, but let's give it a go. All of these attitudes and processes to develop are very stimulating in the learning experience context, because by definition, when we're learning, we want to move into things, into areas that we don't yet know, we can't yet do. And so we don't want to be falling in on perhaps the need to feel safe, secure, to be sure we're going to get a good result at the end. All of these things can happen with the drawing experience, but we want our learning to be in the context of looking for new horizons, for trying new things in a measured way, of course, where they're relevant and we have some chance of success, but also where we can have fun. As someone on a self-taught drawing learning journey, it's easy to get bogged down in doing things very repetitively, very much the same way. And that's not helpful generally for all sorts of reasons. One of them now being the hopefully obvious one, that we can just get bored with what we're doing, and we may think that means we're being bored with drawing when we're actually just bored with the lessons we give ourselves or find for ourselves all the time. Lessons and an approach are content videos that perhaps seem to work at the start, and then we adopted them over and over again and didn't realize that in the whole educational learning experience, there are simply better ways to do it. Better ways for us and for the place that we're getting to. My third benefit of doing a course, that's something we have to compensate for perhaps if we're self-taught, is that a course, a curriculum, it disciplines us in the time and the dates and the sessions that we do. If it's an external course that we go somewhere for, then we have to be somewhere at a set time doing our course, and we probably have the external pressure of homework, of things to complete for the next session. This can be tremendously helpful, particularly if we're trying to learn in the midst of a life of work and other responsibilities and other things that we just want to do. And if this is something we're doing ourselves in our free time, it can be hard to juggle all the possibilities and conflicting responsibilities that we have. It may even be hard to give ourselves permission to do something that we see as being fun or as being for my own personal interest instead of things that we should be doing. Whereas once I've booked into a course that I've paid for, then if I'm thinking, well, on Wednesday at 7:30 I need to be there, I will be there. And so it takes the decision making out of the process, if you like, of learning to draw. It removes the option of doing something else for most of us. But when I'm self-taught, it can be really hard to preserve, protect, be motivated, feel that I can use time to draw. And clearly, if I'm not drawing regularly, then that's really going to inhibit what I do. Regardless of how well I might be organizing what I do, I still need to have time to do it and to do it regularly. So often when we start to draw, it can be incredibly hard, even when we just have to go into a room and sit down at a desk in our home. It can be so hard to start. But once we do, we can find it very energizing and we have no trouble continuing. Sometimes that external pressure of a course, particularly if we have to go somewhere to do it, just pushes us to that place where we start. And once we've started, nobody needs to persuade us to keep going. Now, this one is possibly more important for some people than others, but I think it's actually more important for all of us than we realize. One of the great benefits of a course is simply the camaraderie of a cohort, of a class, of class members, of classmates, of people doing the same thing around us. People we can laugh with, moan with, complain about the teacher with, share the struggles and frustrations and fears of what we're doing, share the joys, the highs and lows, laugh at each other's work, praise each other's work, get practice at talking about each other's work. But more importantly, I think, be inspired by each other's work. Not necessarily, and you wouldn't expect this in a class, oh, I really want to be like them, but simply to see how the same curriculum content, heard exactly in the same words by everyone, ends up being filtered, understood, and expressed differently in the marks on the paper with whatever the drawing is done with by different people. Even that process, I think, is tremendously stimulating and helpful. It helps us realize that there's no right way. It helps us realize that how we draw is very much a product of who we are and our life experience up to that point, not just the course, not just the content. And we do get ideas from seeing 5, 10, 20 different ways of understanding the same content expressed with the same subject at the same time. Anything that widens our thinking when we're learning any skill, but I think particularly drawing, is tremendously helpful. It stops us thinking there's a right way, there's a wrong way. And if we become more open to the possibilities of doing the one thing, expressing the one thing, we may actually search harder and deeper inside of ourselves, looking for possibilities, not presuming that the way we automatically do it is the only way or the best way. So for all sorts of reasons, we do lose that when we're on an isolated, self-taught drawing journey. And finding ways to connect with others in our drawing, therefore, can be a tremendously helpful thing to do for our own drawing development. I've left this till last, but probably the most obvious thing we do get when we do a course is we get a teacher. And I think one of the greatest benefits we get from having a teacher in a course is we get specific feedback about our work. We have an objective set of eyes and mind and a way advanced understanding of what we're trying to do to what we have ourselves, to look at what we're doing and to work out where there are helpful things happening and where there are things that maybe aren't helpful for where we're wanting to get in our drawing happening, and to give us, hopefully in an encouraging way, not just that information, but also direction to how we can go on from that place. How we might strengthen the strong points and how we might overcome or push through or move around the weak points. In effect, I'm talking about marking our work. But it's not just marking our work and giving us a tick or a cross. It's also working out when we're ready to move ahead and how far ahead we're ready to move. Maybe we can move ahead, but not by much. Maybe what we've done shows that we can jump ahead a significant part. Or maybe we should go back and reinforce some skills that we've done in previous lessons, because perhaps what we're doing now doesn't show enough understanding of those things. Now, if I don't have a teacher doing this, I need to do it myself. And there are ways we can do it, and I have a number of videos on how to critique our own work, what sort of questions to ask, and also strategies of how to do it. And even if we're not teacher trained, we shouldn't underestimate our ability to hugely benefit ourselves with some simple critiquing, and to give ourselves direction that really will focus our improvement where we need it to be and help us move on as productively as possible. But it's certainly something we need to be thinking about if we don't have a course teacher. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Look, I hope these thoughts have been helpful. I am a trained teacher. I haven't done an art course, but I'm certainly aware of the learning process and of the benefits of having a curriculum and of having a teacher. I'm also aware of some of the struggles of navigating our drawing journey on a self-taught basis, of not always being sure what to do, where, how. And I hope these 5 points have perhaps given you some way of controlling your own drawing experience to overcome any potential weaknesses of being self-taught. But in the end, however you organise your drawing journey, however fast or slow, whatever you are or aren't doing, make sure you have fun and stay interested. I'll see you next time, hopefully on a slightly less cold day. Bye.